Hello, I'm Mario Anderson, and welcome to In Focus Kentucky, where we take a look at issues that matter to you right here in the Bluegrass State, and we'll talk to the lawmakers, community organizers, and people like you who help shape those policies. Today we're focusing on the possible takeover of the Jefferson County Public School System by the state of Kentucky and the possible ramifications if it takes place. A state takeover of the Jefferson County Public School Systems would strip the governing power of the school system from the locally controlled school board. That includes Superintendent Marty Pollio as well as the elected members of the district's board. So how did we get here? According to the Louisville Courier-Journal, after an audit of the school system was performed by the Kentucky Department of Education, it was determined that there were several issues, including poor achievement test scores throughout the school district, a lack of school safety, and no clear direction on how to address the student assignment plan to the school system's most vulnerable populations. From there, many were outspoken on both sides on what next steps should be taken to get things in order within Jefferson County Public School Systems, and one of the loudest supporters of a possible state takeover is Interim Commissioner of the Department of Education, Dr. Wayne Lewis, who joins me now. Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you for having me.
And before we get into this takeover discussion, we want to first talk about the vision for the Educator Preparation in Kentucky program that you support. How do you think that will help the state school system?
So there's no more important school level factor to the success of our kids than having a high quality teacher in the classroom. I mean, research supports that, and we all know that, right? It's common sense. We all want to have a great teacher for our kids. So it's really important that we continue to move forward with educator preparation and be really intentional about continued efforts to improve what we do. And for me, that begins with recruitment, right? Who is it that we're recruiting into the profession? Are we starting even at the middle school, the high school level, tapping young people who we think have the potential to be outstanding educators to say, hey, are you thinking about going into the profession? And the reason that's so important is one, in colleges of teacher education, over the last 10 years or so, we've seen a decline in the enrollment of folks going into teacher education programs. There are other factors as well. We want to continue to get the best and the brightest to come into the profession. And then, Mario, to be perfectly honest, we have not done a great job of increasing the diversity of the candidate pool for teaching positions. We have to do a better job at that as well. We need more males in the classroom. We need more people of color in the classroom. We need more people with disabilities in the classroom. We need more people who come from low-income backgrounds in the classrooms. And it's going to take us being intentional about recruitment. And then once we get those folks into teacher preparation programs, we've got to continue to improve our practice. Make sure that we're preparing folks well for the specific context that they're likely to go into. There are some things that cut across the board, whether you're going into a high-income environment or you're going into a low-income rural environment, but then there are some specific contextual factors as well that we need to pay attention to and make sure that if somebody's going into a high poverty urban community, that they're well prepared to meet the needs of the kids that they're going to serve.
That brings us up to speed to kind of where we are today with you're involved with overseeing the schools in our state of Kentucky, and obviously there's a lot of conversation and discussion on the Jefferson County Public School System's takeover. So explain to us kind of why you're in favor of what's being proposed of these new recommendations and the audit that was released just recently.
All right, so this is a really, really serious situation, and I think it's important for your viewers to understand how we got here. So yes, we're talking about now the findings of the audit that was completed April 30th, 2018, but this goes way back. Right? Before there was a management audit, former Commissioner Stephen Pruitt believed that there was enough evidence to proceed with a management review. That preceded the audit. The result of that management review gave 30+ significant deficiencies found to be in the district. As a result of that review, former Commissioner Pruitt believed that there was enough to send a larger team from the Department of Education into JCPS to conduct a management audit. That management audit is what we're talking about now, and those findings show that there continue to be significant deficiencies in the district. We're talking about deficiencies in Head Start, which has been highlighted in the news lately. So you're talking about our youngest learners and learners who are come from low-income families, instances of abuse, of neglect. We have findings related to the service of kids with special needs, implementation of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We have findings around the inadequate training and preparation of staff to be able to deliver instructional programs, but also to remain in compliance with the requirements of grant programs. The inability to retain high quality staff in schools and in classrooms where we need high quality staff the most. That's really just a few of many of the things that I highlight in my letter, and even more that you find in the details of the audit. My recommendation to the Kentucky Board of Education is that JCPS become a state-managed district. And I have to tell you that if I believed that a less invasive recommendation could turn the district around to a place where it was, in fact, taking seriously the needs of our most vulnerable children, I would have made that recommendation. I made the recommendation for state management because I am convinced, and the audit provides evidence, that that is the only way to ensure that our youngest learners, our children with special needs, children of color, children from low-income backgrounds, that they are served in the same manner and treated with the same respect as children that come from middle-income and affluent backgrounds.
And I know that one of the areas in that particular audit that was a pretty big concern as well was the school safety, and that was one of the top issues that was listed. So explain to us about that and what needs to be addressed on that issue.
Right, so this is one of the issues that started even the management review, right? The issues around staff's appropriate use of restraint, appropriate or inappropriate use of the seclusion of students. These are things that were triggered, I believe, initially by media investigations. The Courier-Journal played a large role over the years in exposing some of these practices that were going on in the district. And this is a long-standing thing. The mistreatment of children, the abuse of children. And what troubles me almost as much as the actual abuse and neglect is the finding that the district over many years has been incapable of holding adults accountable for their actions. So not only have these things been allowed to happen to continue, but adults who have perpetrated those things have for many years been able to just be moved to different jobs, in some cases not be disciplined at all.
Now, with the recommendations they've been submitted, for viewers, explain to them what the next steps is in the process moving forward.
So I've made a recommendation to the Kentucky Board of Education that JCPS become a state-managed district. The district then had the right to challenge essentially my recommendation and participate in a public hearing. The district did elect to do that and notified us of that decision on May 30th, 2018. And so now our attorneys are in conversation with the hearing officer in trying to determine dates for that hearing. Ultimately, it will be the State Board of Education who will make a decision as to whether they accept my recommendation for state management or not. If they do not accept my recommendation, then the district moves forward and we figure out what next steps will be to improve learning for children. If they do accept my recommendation, the next steps would be that the district, in collaboration with us at the Department of Education, would develop what the law calls an improvement plan or a corrective action plan, where we, in detail, set out a plan to address all of the deficiencies that have been identified in that audit.
And then switching gears, I know that another hot topic, if you will, is the conversation of public charter schools, and obviously there's as well misconceptions of what that actually means. So, but I know that you have called them a powerful tool. Mm-hmm. So why do you think those will potentially be necessary or for our state of Kentucky?
It's no secret, for generations we have struggled to see gains for low-income kids and for low-income kids of color in particular. So the better question for me would be, why would we not consider a strategy, consider a reform that has shown itself to be effective with the very populations of students that we've struggled with the most? And my answer to that is there's no good reason other than the fact that it makes some adults uncomfortable, that it results in parents having greater decision making about where their children go to school and how their children are educated, as opposed to people like me in Frankfort or people at the local district level making decisions about where your kids and how your kids should be educated, putting the power in the hands of parents and then saying we're going to allow the public dollars that are allocated for public education to follow your kid to whatever public school you decide is best for your kid. The truth is, when we think about this from the perspective of parents, public charter schools are not controversial at all. Because I've yet to run into a parent in Kentucky or anywhere else that tells me, actually, you know, I don't want more options for my kid. I don't want more public school options to be able to choose what type of school, what type of setting, what type of instructional program is a better fit for my kid. The only time this becomes controversial is when we're talking about choices for other people's kids.
And whether it's state management or introducing public charter schools, both of these issues doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. So we appreciate that you for joining us here to talk about these different issues. And
thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and we're looking forward to seeing what the next steps are, and we'll have you back here to explain where we go from here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, coming up, we'll speak with Kentucky State Representative Jason Nemes, who recently authored an op-ed titled "State Takeover of JCPS Unnecessary." We'll have him here to elaborate on his stance next on In Focus Kentucky.